Frank, thank you again for joining us today. Obviously, we want to talk to you about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Last time we talked to you, Bitcoin was riding a huge high, closing in almost at 19,000. We've seen that drop. What do you think about that? What do you make of it?
Well, I think it's important to recognize that that Bitcoin world is predominantly a cash world. So it's not really speculative where all big bubbles have been created because it's highly leveraged.
Yeah.
Real estate crash of '08, the '87 crash was futures market, S&P 500. This is predominantly a cash market. In fact, even the Bitcoin contract traded in the futures market, you can't leverage it. You have to actually have more collateral. So I'm not all worried about it, but it is a volatile, it's emergent industry, and it's speculative money. And what I saw is that these young investors are not really investing, they're all speculators, and it's easier to speculate on a new ICO and opening an account at Coinbase than it is to turn around, open up in a brokerage account to turn around and buy junior mining. Yep. Most of the brokerage firms, especially owned by the banks, are pushed back against speculative mining or speculative anything, and there's just the DNA of blood of human beings. They want to be on the latest craze or discovery, so it's impacting junior mining.
So you think long-term fundamentals are looking good for Bitcoin? Do you think we'll see the kind of highs that we just saw?
Yes, I do, and I think what's really important to recognize is that Bitcoin is to blockchain technology what emails was to the internet. The internet was slow, it was a dark, sinister place to go, and emails all of a sudden showed the functionality of it. So Bitcoin is showing the functionality of 24/7 stock trading, moving money around. So they just turn around and remove the word Bitcoin and they can move something else around with it. And I think that that's what's really the key and significant factor in blockchain technology.
Well, it's interesting, Frank. Talk to us a bit about ICOs, initial coin offerings. Do you see those replacing IPOs? Is that sort of an either or?
Well, for the junior mining space, it clearly has. And this is amazing to look at the numbers and the new coins that are coming out, and some are scams, and just like 50 years ago with junior mining and technology, etc., they just were promotion scams. Well, that's where that'll get cleansed out, and investors just have to be aware of it. But the millennials are something else. I'll give you a data point. Schwab took 30 years to amass 3.5 trillion in 10 million accounts. In 2 years, Coinbase has 13 million accounts. Now, Coinbase doesn't have the dollar punching power of Schwab, but something else is happening. What took 30 years is less than 3 years, and it's more people speculating. And they're speculating on these ICOs, or Bitcoin, or Ethereum, Ethereum Classic. I can go on with a list of the names, but that's the big revolution, and it's outside of the normal securities world. What really, to me, is important is what happens when they come over to the stock side. And we're seeing that with HIVE. HIVE Blockchain Technology all of a sudden started seeing those millennials that never bought a stock because there was no direct play buying HIVE. Now, hopefully, other stocks will be going public in the space and other stories, so it's been revitalizing the Canadian capital markets outside of marijuana deals.
Well, you mentioned HIVE has just closed a $115 million financing. What's on the agenda? What are we looking at for the company over the next
It's really impressive, the Canadian capital markets, that in 1 quarter we could raise at 3 different price levels almost $200 million. I mean, that's really remarkable. That's like raising $2 billion for a startup in the US. And with that, we're going to have our revenue this time next year. Now, there's lots of caveats. What is the price of Bitcoin and Ethereum? But based on today's prices and based on the cost of mining those currencies today, and the performance suggests that we would have potential to be 300 million in revenue, 150 million in cash flow, and close to 100 million in free cash flow. Now that means there's lots of upside.
Frank, let me ask you about gold. We've seen gold do really well at the beginning of the year. Is that sort of a byproduct of people returning from Bitcoin and going back into gold, or is it really an either or debate? Should we be looking at it differently?
Yes, gold is, there's no real debate between gold and Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin doesn't work if there's no electricity. And I think of San Juan with the hurricane, it was worthless. What worked was US dollars and gold and silver coins, if you had to buy food or water. So I think it's a part of the early investors, the early gold bug adopters, they never sold the gold to buy Bitcoin, they just diversified, having 1 or 2% in it. And what I think is really important for investors to recognize, gold has outperformed the S&P 2-to-1 since the beginning of the century.
Yeah.
Right, 2-to-1. And last year was up 12%.
Yeah.
Those are great numbers. But the general media always talks down gold as being negative, and it's more volatile. It's the same volatility of the S&P 500. So I think that